Hi, this is James, and this is a video of my series before my EP drops April 18th, Old Conversations by James Co. And what I want to talk about for this video is kind of like the state of modern like rock music or alternative music, or even just like music made by bands. This is inspired by like the new Black Country New Road album that just came out, Forever How Long, because it made me think about why there's this sort of like there's sectors now in rock music or like alternative music that are very distinct and seem to be kind of holding back the genre in some ways. So for Black Country New Road, I love this album, I love this band, and they're part of a scene I would define as having like Squid in it. There's some other groups like what used to be Black Midi, and now I would say like Jordy Greep. There's some other groups kind of like straddling that line too, but it's this sort of like well arranged, more technical, maybe kind of chamber poppy sometimes alternative music, and it's usually technically complicated. It's not fully like math rock or something like that, but it's still made by a band, and usually it's coming from the UK. While it's very good, I think is very good. Most critics believe it's very good. It doesn't really achieve like super popular status, and like it makes sense. It's not music that makes sense to be like super popular. It's big in the scene, and there's elements of it that are why it is the way it is. It's still catchy at times, and like it does things that are memorable, and it still is held back. And I'm starting to realize through this album how much of it is because of the audience. Now, if you don't know Black Country New Road, they have like 2 albums before this with singer Isaac Wood. He left the group for various reasons, and then their new singer was already in the band, but May Kershaw. They're both phenomenal. I don't want to undermine either of them. I think both contributed their own thing in a very unique way. But there's this weird sort of pushback now to the album, which is criticizing the vocals, which didn't make sense to me because to me, the vocals were better. Now, lyrically, I might still prefer some of their older work, written by Isaac Wood, but performance-wise, I'd say May is a much better vocalist. And I found it really like confusing at first, like why so many people, because I assumed this audience was full of maybe more progressive people based on this music, based on the way you see them interact online. You would think it's more progressive people, but the only reason I can find at this point for like why people who liked the band before don't like this album is kind of rooted in misogyny at some level. So when I compare it to like the last Squid album that just came out this year, I really enjoyed it. That's a male vocalist, but I wasn't like listening to it thinking about the fact that it's a male vocalist. And same with Jordy Greep. I never listened to it like thinking, well, this would be worse if it was a woman vocal. It doesn't make sense. And that whole sector of the scene, I think, is like being capsized by the audience. And kind of the opposite of that in some regards is what I'm going to call like the Viagra Boys and Idols scene. It's more punk influenced, but it's, I think, very approachable. It's usually pretty simple. It's enjoyable. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's not. I think these bands have like the makeup of bands that could be way bigger. I think the Parquet Courts I'd even slide in there, even though who knows what they're doing right now. Because, I mean, honestly, that band, I love them so much, but there's no predicting what they're doing. I just think that scene is really held back by the fact that they don't know how to market their music always. Idols, I think, does the best job, which is why they're the biggest of those groups, even though I think they make the worst music of the 3. I think all 3 make good music, but like Viagra Boys are much better in my mind. They just like don't know fully how to market it yet, because there is an element of them that's very catchy. It's danceable, it's fun, it's great. You can put it on a playlist. It plays well with other people. It's not like so experimental to the point where it's like hard to listen to and inaccessible, but it's still interesting and doing things different enough to where you're not going to be bored with it or feel like you've heard it before. And with their new album coming out, I'm so curious if it's going to have some sort of like surprise, like more success in the US. I'm not expecting some big hit from it, but just like more success than their previous records by a decent margin, because I think it could happen based on the singles, which I love. I would be kind of like surprised if more people didn't latch on to it. You have kind of like almost the inverse of this, which is what I'm going to call like the popular knows how to market, their risk is being boring. And now like the ultimate example of this right now is the new Joe album that came out. I mean, very much using a lot of old influences, using some modern influences, but where it struggles is when it's like over reliant on these like older artists. And I mean, it doesn't always capture your attention. Some of it's very forgettable because it's like, wouldn't you rather just listen to like the better version of this? And I know like I defend Bleachers despite the fact that like you can say that about them and like Springsteen, but like I think it's a little bit different because of the way they produce it, or the way that Jack Antonoff produces it, I should say. But with like Joe, he kind of struggles with that. And when I think of like Harry Styles and like what I assume will be like in the next year or two, probably a major resurgence of him when he comes out with new music, it feels very bland to me because I know what he's referencing so well, and I have such a love for what he's referencing. When he makes a song that's ripping off David Bowie and Prince, I'm like, those are two of my top 5 favorite artists ever. It feels almost disrespectful in some ways the way he does it. Even though I don't think he's trying to be, it just feels very derivative in a way that's like trying to make it more just like accessible for a younger audience in a way that's not resonating nearly as much as it did with Prince or with Bowie. It's not as original as either of those two artists, not groundbreaking. It's not even lyrically as interesting. I don't know who it's for besides people who don't know much about those artists, who find it way more convenient to listen to him. And I know it sounds like very negative what I'm saying about him, but the reason why I'm saying that is because I think with his resources and with his vocal ability and everything, he very much has the potential to do something so much greater. And like my favorite band, I would say, like, or my favorite band right now, the 1975, I think are in this echelon, but I think they're a good example of how to keep pushing things while being very much referential of things that you love, of things that you're interested in. And while they don't make music as frequently as the other two artists, I think it shows that their level of care is just higher sometimes. And I think they're a prime example of how to market yourself as like a modern band, if that makes sense. But yeah, just to wrap things up, I mean, with all the different sectors, they have their own issues. With like the Black Country New Road crowd, it seems to be the audience, ironically, kind of holds it back, despite how the audience may feel. And with like the Viagra Boys and Idols crowd, it's just like finding a way to market it, finding their audience and really pursuing it. And yeah, with the people who are already mainstream, it's just how to stay interesting, do something new. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, if you thought it was interesting at all, subscribe, like the video, check out my EP when it comes out April 18th. Thanks for watching.